Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of Collinwood for YouTube, back with another video for you guys. This one's a read-along to Benight and Beguile, written by John Philip Betancourt. Book 2, Chapter 9. My fingers are all jacked up, so I can't put that many up right. So that carpal tunnel, that's what that is. God. Here we go. Lockwood Thicket was a small cottage deep in the Terramore forest that had been abandoned by the Lockwood family decades ago. The Lockwoods, Rebecca's family, had been on the island for many years and were part of the first settlers who had come there and dug in their roots and had built a small home they would eventually outgrow. Sebastian was familiar with this little cottage. He had played there when he was young, even stayed the night and hunted with his father and uncle, but the home, with its peeling exterior and overgrown bushes, had fallen out of favor over the years. Inside, Evie had fainted when she saw her supposed dead husband standing before her, a shadowy figment of what he once was. His eyes were the most terrifying to her, dark in nature, yet they seemed to glow at the same time. But most of all the fact he was truly alive and not dead tore into her like a scalding hot knife in butter. She began to come to in the small, fluffy dead bed in one of the two bedrooms. She rolled over, tangled in her dress, and looked directly to the right of her, where a person was sitting in a chair, obscured by the darkness of the shadow of the near amour. It was Sebastian, watching over his wife as if she had been ill. She squinted her eyes to see if she could make him out better. "Is it really you?" she asked. He sat forward in the chair, allowing the right side of his face to catch the candlelight. "It is. It's really me," he answered. "But how? I saw you die in my arms. I saw all the blood. I buried you, Sebastian. I was sure that all those sins I was seeing around the house were planted to make me believe it was you alive, and it really was you," Evie added. "It's complicated. I don't really know how I would explain it all at all, but I am here. I am alive," he said, pausing just before he used the word alive. In truth, he was alive, but in a different capacity. Keep telling yourself that. No, he's undead. Um, I must still be dreaming. Whatever Dr. Kim did to me, whatever he injected me with, or whatever the shock treatment did to my brain, must have damaged me forever. It's impossible. It's impossible that I am sitting in front of you, talking to you, hearing your voice. Or maybe I died too. Maybe I died in that hospital, Sebastian. Did I die?" Evie asked, moving closer to the foot of the bed to get a better look at her husband. "No, my love, this is not a dream, and you're not dead. I saved you from Wincliffe and everything that was happening to you. I promise you," Sebastian answered, now sitting up and getting as close as he could to Evie's worried face. "You are alive and well, and I am here to be with you forever, like we were meant to be before the shooting." "But it can't be," Evie said, pulling back from him as she began to feel a shiver go up her back. "It's true," he replied. As they looked each other in the eyes, she felt the cold breath of darkness surrounded her. It was as if the temperature in the room dropped below freezing. Two of the lit candles went out in puffs of smoke, which darkened the room significantly. Evie screamed and jumped off the bed and ran toward the door of the room. Sebastian raised his hand, and the door closed in front of her on its own. With just the power of his mind keeping Evie inside with him, she pounded on the door and screamed for help, but no one would hear her. Evie, please, I am not going to hurt you. I would never ever hurt you. I just want you to see that I've come back in the most strange of ways, and not by my own will it was. How do I even say this? A spell, witchcraft, I promise you. I want nothing more than to be normal again like I was, but here I am in this form. We have some sort of a second chance, if you'll allow it, Sebastian said, his eyes filling with tears. Witches don't exist. This isn't a child's story, and I must truly be insane. Maybe Jacob was right, and I've fallen into some kind of dark fantasy in my mind, and that has manifested you. Any minute now, Dr. Kim is going to wake me up, and from this I will be back at Wincliffe. And as sick as it sounds, I'll be safe, she said, trying to keep distance from herself and the man calling himself Sebastian. No, no, it's not a dream. How many times do I have to tell you, Evie? I am real here. Touch me, touch me, Sebastian said, grabbing at Evie's arms and forcing her to touch his face. When their skin came into contact, she could feel his flesh was real, cold, like ice, but real. His eyes, different, in glow different, lacking a sparkle, but they're awake, real. She then put her other hand on his face and on her own, and felt more. Felt his hair, touched his lips, touched his ears and shoulders. You're real. This is real, she said to herself and to Sebastian. I am, he said with a smile. And with this final confirmation, she fell into his arms and they hugged. Deep and soft, warm and loving, they were connected and back, and their love had somehow overcome death and incarceration and madness. But could it survive what she felt for Christian? Had I known you would come back, I would have never, she paused, unsure of how to explain her self-relationship with Constable Evans. Never what, he asked, sitting her down slowly back on the bed. You had died, and I was alone. I had no one. I had Celeste, but I felt so alone in the way of connection with someone. And Christian became a good friend to me. He made me feel protected, Sebastian. He and I, well, I think we became too close, she said. Sebastian already knew his friend had fallen in love with this widow, and his widow had fallen in love with his friend. At least it was the type of love they felt, real, but truly they both were filling a void left by Sebastian's death. Was it true? True love? He asked. Love, she said softly. I don't even know what love is, she added as the candles in the back that went dead and the cold air suddenly flickered back on with a flame. We loved each other. Did you feel love when we became married? When we met? When we walked alone the grounds of Terramore? He asked, holding her hand with his now gloved hands to hide the coldness of his skin. Of course I felt love with you, so then you do know what love is, and maybe I've come back for the good of that despite what I have become. We could rekindle that, Evie. We could finally be the family we were meant to be. And what is that? What is it? What have you become? She asked him, the words almost stinging in his ears. Something that needs the shadows of the night to live. The sun is somewhat of a dangerous weapon the witch placed on me, but night is just as long as the day. We could find happiness in the night as soon as the sun goes down and the moon rises, he answered. You can only live in the darkness. She paused. I can't say what that means to me. It's not real, she exclaimed, as she jumped up from the bed, pulling away from his gloved hands. Evie, please understand me. I may be what I am now, but I love you. for you had I have for you has never died and will never die. All I have in me now, I live every hour of what I have for you. You are all I think about, and I cannot bear to be without you. But if you love someone else, then perhaps I should find a way to vanish. Leave you to your new life, Sebastian answered. She turned to him, his eyes again filled with the sorrow of the terrible reality of what had happened to him. Thanks to Mary and Eliza, she was unsure of what to say. How could she be back in love with a ghost, a figment of her imagination, perhaps? How could she feel what she was feeling for a man she had said goodbye to and witnessed his burial? Then she remembered the feeling of being buried alive in her dream and how she felt it was so real. Then she woke up. Perhaps her dream was telling her that something all those months ago, the grave that she was in foreshadowing, it was telling her something from beyond was to return. How could she have forgotten this? Now something had come from beyond the grave, like in her dream, but it wasn't her. It was Sebastian. I don't love anyone else. No, only you, she said truthfully. Christian and I were not meant to be. It was a mistake, she said, moving close to him and grabbing onto his hands again, the leather of his glove twisting with her tight grip. Then we should be husband and wife again, he said, smiling with his sweet, cold grin. We never stopped being husband and wife, she grinned back. And in the darkness that kept Sebastian safe in the shadow of the room inside the tiny house called Lockwood Thicket, they kissed deep and passionately. He began to remove her clothes, and she began to remove his too, their bodies touching skin to skin, heart to heart. Here lay her down on he lay her down on the bed and kissed her naked breast. He could feel her pulse, the blood in her body racing faster and faster. The more intimate they became with each other, her body was so warm, her heart thumping away in her chest. He could smell her even without trying. Her skin was like the perfume, oozing a scent like roses and fresh rain. She reached down and pulled his back up to her lips from her stomach and kissed him again. And in a small room they finally made love for the first time in the flickering light of the candles, husband and wife, widow and vampire. The following day the Siren's Call pub was busy for a weekday afternoon. There were fishermen who filled the room to its brim, filling their guts with the peanuts and ham sandwiches, attempting to pad the walls of their bellies to make in the excess of beer that was coming from the tap a sign that they'd be soon out to sea once again for a long period of time. Sitting amongst the loud, smelly fishermen of Welshport in a side booth with dark green leather chairs, leather, and wooded both divides with green painted glass that sparkled in the sun with Philip Braga and Nicholas Jordan. Philip was concerned that Christian had been filling Nick's head with strange stories of Sebastian's untimely demise. But what Nick was really worried about was his missing sister from Wentcliffe Sanitarium on the mainland. As the two shared a beer, Nick was visibly shaken about his now missing sister Evie. I just don't understand why she'd just leave that place and not find a way to tell me. Even worse, how are we supposed to find her? Nick asked, his suit perfect and clean with a thick black tie that hid behind a gray vest with golden buttons. How do you know Christian was even telling you the truth? We we all he had some kind of mental break down since Evie was taken to Wayncliffe. This could be some sort of mental break that he's manifesting, Philip countered. No, it's not, he said. Was He was at Terramore updating the family on some woman named Mary, and that the doctor was taking care of Evie at the hospital burst in and said she had escaped right there in front of him. Nick explained. She couldn't have escaped on her own, Philip said, almost as if it was meant to have a thought, but it came out of his mouth. He was clearly worried that this yet another sign. Sebastian was out and about. You know what's going on, Philip? Gotta tell somebody. How did you know she wasn't alone? Christian also said there was another patient that left with her, another woman, Nick said, as a fisherman sitting at the bar in a thick blue wool sweater and matching woven cap caught the last part of Nick's sentence. It was Matthew Winterbourne. A woman, Philip said, confused about the sex of Evie's helper, thinking it was Sebastian that had helped her. Neither Philip or Nick knew the exact truth of Evie's escape from Windcliff, that Sebastian and Georgina had broken into the hospital and abducted Evie while the other patient, Alice, escaped on her own following the other three. The entire situation seemed confusing and had several threads of truth that had yet to be unraveled. But for eavesdropping Matthew, he listened as close as he could to his bar patron neighbors to see if they were actually after his sister Alice to hurt her. That's what Christian said, but to be honest, his mind was all over the place, and as soon as he was able to get that part out, they came and took him away. Just like they must have taken my sister. She's been taken, and how now she's lost. And Chris is now where she is. All this is just too confusing to understand. And frankly, Philip, I have a good mind to find Evie and take her back to England. This whole island sends the shivers up and down my spine, Nick added. We'll find her, I'm sure we will. If it were me at the head of the investigation, I'd bet Evangeline is back on Welshport somewhere, Philip confided. Why do you think that? Nick wondered, sipping the amber beer from his frosty mug. This is where she belongs now. She's said to so herself to my partner Celeste. They became very close while she worked as Evie's maid. Evie believes that this is where she was meant to be, Philip said. That's mad. If she thought that then, I guarantee that she doesn't believe that now. Everything that has happened has most likely soured her on this strange island, and this family she's been married into forever again. I know my sister, she is probably on a boat somewhere right now headed back to England, and I'm the fool sitting here in this god-forsaken place still looking for her. Jesus, I should just go back now, back too, Nick said, the beer now floating through his small body and his veins, giving him the courage to say everything he felt without filter. Excuse me, Matthew said, finding it the perfect time to intervene. Philip and Nick both looked up at the tall man's skinned, handsome man with the thick black hair tan skin, the, under his wool cap. Help you, sir? Philip asked, then sipping his beer. I couldn't help but overhear your conversation, so I hope you won't be too sore with me, but I think I know who you were talking about and I think I could help, Matthew said politely. You know my sister? Do you know where she is? Nick asked, jumping to conclusions. No, no, not your sister, but the other person you said might have left with her from some hospital on the mainland. That was my sister, Alice. She showed up just the other day, and she told me herself that she left the hospital. I had her placed there years ago. Matthew paused. Well, she had her troubles. She seems better now, actually. She did tell me that she had a friend who left there, too, right before she did. That's Evie. It has to be, Nick exclaimed. Now let's jump to conclusions now, Philip warned. Where are you, friend? Who are you, friend? Matthew. And your sister is Alice. How did she get to Welshport from mainland? Philip asked. Matthew couldn't just say she used these God-given supernatural powers and swam 105 miles underwater and surprised him. He thought for a second and said, she stowed away on a supply trawler from Bangor. Philip looked at Matthew with a suspicious look, but had no choice but to believe him. Was Evie with her? Is she at your place now with Alice? Nick asked eagerly. No, she's alone. She came alone. But listen, my sister is very special. She has this way about her that can do things. She can see things. She can be things. I know she cares about your sister, Evangeline. She said they were very close, and I have a feeling with what all she has in her, she can help find Evie. In fact, I have no doubt about it, Matthew said. Philip and Nick looked at each other from across the bar's table that had hundreds of years of carvings in its surface with names and of sailors and soldiers and lovers from all over the decades. The sounds of the busy bar seemed to quickly fade as they both almost telepathically decided that Matthew was their best bet yet to find E.B. Jordan Lord. What we have what we have to lose? Nick asked, sipping the last of his now warm beer. I guess you're right. Listen, Matthew, can we meet with Alice today? Time is of the essence. I have a feeling someone may be after Evie, and we want to make sure she's safe, Philip asked. What are you talking about? Who's after her? Nick asked Philip, surprised by his words. They had never talked about Evie being in danger or being followed by someone dangerous. Philippe said to think fast. He had to his mind that Sebastian was out there probably in some ravaging, bloodthirsty, and mad hunger, attacking people in secret, and perhaps had Evie locked away somewhere, but he knew he couldn't just come out and say it. So he just said Jacob. Jacob Lord could be after her. Nick seemingly, and with some of the alcohol still racing around his veins, agreed and pushed Matthew to take them both to Alice at once. Matthew agreed and paid his tab. Then the three quickly made their way through the maze of drunk sailors and fishermen and then out of the Siren's Call pub and headed to Matthew's small apartment on the north side of Welshport village to find Alice and seek her mystical help to recover Evie. As the three caught a cab, Philippe worried, though, that Sebastian or even Jacob himself had gotten to her first, that perhaps they'd all be too late. At Terramore House, Celeste had arrived for her early morning sessions with Charlotte. They were set to learn about the wonders of the world on this day. Persian art, Roman architecture, Greek history, very small lessons in each topic which sustained Charlotte's young mind, and at the same time give Celeste the time to rethink what she, Charlotte, and Sabrina Spirit had plotted not too long ago in the cafe in the village. After Celeste's run and the subsequent failure of killing Jacob, she didn't want to try again. He knew he now had legitimate proof of something she wanted hidden about her family, and the blackmail would be too much for her to handle. And most definitely the truth of what she did with Jacob in bed would destroy her lifelong for love with Philip. In her dust blue dress with a long train that stretched from bustled to about her feet. Her Celeste decorated Charlotte's makeshift schoolroom with open books on each topic without her even noticing. Jacob entered the room. Your student, dear governess, won't be in today. He, as he entered the room, and sharp suit, black and gray, with cufflinks that sparkled in the sun that peeked through the diamond-grilled windows of the room. Celeste's body stiffened with disgust as she saw the man that forced himself on her, blackmailing her into bed. She felt revolted at the sight of him, but true to her kept form, to her form, kept her composure. What do you mean? Is she not feeling well? I could go up and serve her some tea, Celeste offered. No, no, I'm sure she's physically well. Mentally, perhaps, that's something else, Jacob replied, coming close to Celeste, so close she could feel his breath on her neck. He kissed her, and she pushed him away. Now that is not the way to push your beloved, he said in jest, knowing she couldn't stand him. Please, she replied quickly, making her way towards the door to find Charlotte. You won't find Charlotte in her room. She's in the turret, locked in the turret, I should say, Jacob said. Locked in the turret? Why? Celeste replied in horror. She's been a bad girl, Celeste. That's how bad girls are punished. Why don't you sit here next to me and tell me why I think she's been a bad girl, yes? Celeste for her brows, she felt like she was in some kind of riddle. He was talking to her, but she wasn't sure that he was even talking about what he was talking about, what he meant, or if he was trying to trick her. But she was worried about the young heiress, Charlotte, and her. Celeste entertained her Jacob's invitation. Go on, then, tell me, she said. Why has she been punished? Charlotte asked, moving a stack of books from a chair so that she could sit across from Jacob. Do you mean to tell me, as her governess, you have no idea? I find that hard to believe, Jacob said. Yes, I truly do not know. It's almost 10 o'clock and she's been in the turret all night. Celeste worried. She has, Jacob. Has she eaten? Celeste shouted, darting up from the chair. Of course, I had a cook take something to the turret door. But you seem to talk about her as if she were one innocent person, when we both know that is not the case, don't we? He said to Celestia's shock. I don't know what you mean, she lied. Of course you do, of course you do. How else would Charlotte been able to carry on without that? I don't know what you'd call it, possession perhaps, without help from someone else. You come to mind, Jacob accused. Celeste's breath slowed. Possession, she feigned. Enough game, Celeste, he growled. She saw no need for further the lies Jacob clearly knew about Sabrina. I only found out recently, the governess confessed softly. The situation with Sabrina inside Charlotte had jailed long enough in both their minds for them to come to terms with the strangeness of its ability. Terribly disturbing, but they both saw Sabrina. They both witnessed her reveal herself from the inside Charlotte to know it was real. I assume you discovered this around the time when you came into my room with a pair of sharp shears. No doubt, my dear ghostly sister-in-law, Sabrina put you up to that. Well, it doesn't matter when you know or how long you knew. What matters is you helped me figure out how to rid her of that woman. Inside of her, Sabrina was a whore in life who connived my brother into marriage. And the very idea of her inside my daughter making my skin crawl. Why do you suggest we do to fix this? Jacob asked, somewhat hysterically. "I knew Sabrina, Lord Jacob. She was none of those things. Your brother loved her. In fact, that you continue to smear her and put out these lies about her is precisely why she can't leave this world and finally go on to the next. Don't you see? All of those terrible things that you have happened here in this house, in this family, have you as the common demonitor, Jacob. Perhaps it's all you. You are the dark force that brings the horror into these walls," Celeste replied, her heart pouring out everything she had wanted to say for a while. "Me?" Jacob said with a laugh. Now full know full well how evil he had been. "I don't bring all the terrible things to this family. I've done all I could to keep this family and its business afloat. Besides, making love to you happened in these walls. That wasn't terrible, was it?" He asked with a sinner's smirk. "You're disgusting," she shot back, feeling dirty the same way she felt when he blackmailed her into bed. "You didn't fight me. You seemed happy. Did I make you happy?" Jacob continued, making her feel even worse than she did before. "Happy? I was blackmailed. Used your power and forced me. How could I have been happy? You didn't give me a choice," she hissed. "Oh, I think you have a choice, and you chose to keep your family secret." "I don't blame you," he replied. "I don't want to talk about it. Do you understand me? I don't want to talk about it. You held something over me, and that is the only reason that happened, and it won't happen again," Celeste asserted. "I think it will, my dear. I truly think it will, because I have over what I have over you hasn't ended or gone away. And if you truly want to keep your family's good name good, then you'll do whatever I want, whenever I want," Jacob said with a slithering voice like a snake in the grass. "You piece of Celeste began before Jacob hushed her with his finger and kissed her on the lips. She kissed back only to bite him on the lip. You, he screamed, blood dripping from his lip on to the room's pure white carpet. She stood her ground. She was standing there in front of the man who made her break the vows to her beloved Philip, all because of a secret she was holding back from the world to protect her family. He knew what she was doing. He was as cold as a reptile, a murderer, a blackmailer, a liar. Everything cruel and evil in the world stood in front of her, and she stood tall. But the bite to his lip only made him more in love. She was feisty. He liked feisty. He removed the handkerchief and embroidered with his initials JL in the blue thread. He dabbed the white cloth over the bite mark, leaving perfectly round circles of blood on it. The monogram on the handkerchief, too, turned from the blue JL to a purple, till his blood seeped into it. "Let me go check on her, please," Celeste asked calmly of Charlotte. "All right," Jacob sighed, "but only if you kiss me one more time." "No bites," he said, as he came close to her again and grabbed her by the wrist. He pulled her close. She could see that he desired her. He truly did desire her. He could feel how frightened and even disgusted she was by him. But it didn't matter. Inside of his cold heart that for some reason, she would be the one to be his wife. He was falling in love with her. Even though he was being so cruel and cold to her, she closed her eyes and waited for him to kiss her. She did not pucker up. She did not move. She did not like it. Then he lifted his soft pillow-like lips, and she opened her eyes, and when she opened them, his hand was extended with the key to the turret where Charlotte and the ghost that persisted her, Sabrina, were being punished. Celeste grabbed the keys and quickly made her way down the long hallway that led to a second long hallway that she quickly rushed down to find the door of the turret. Celeste nervously slipped the key into the lock and turned it. The latch lifted, and she opened the door, and there was Charlotte. "Celeste," the little girl said, hoping her father had come to free her. "Oh, darling girl," Charlotte said, crouching on low so that Charlotte could run into her open arms. They held onto each other tightly, squeezing so tight as they had not seen each other for years. Charlotte was terrified of what her father was capable of, and all she wanted to do was feel safe again. And in Celeste's arms she did not feel safe. She was almost becoming like a mother figure for her. As the two continued to hug, Charlotte began to feel something like a spark of light in her mind. It was a message from Sabrina inside of her. The two, ghost and child, spared a psychic and could speak to each other without even uttering a word out loud. Charlotte pulled away from Celeste, but kept her perfect little hands on Celeste's shoulders. She looked deep into Celeste's dark eyes, pools of amber and chocolate, and concentrated on what Sabrina was telling her in her mind. Charlotte noticed something about Celeste, something that she hadn't seen before the last time they talked before the scissors incident. Her skin was brighter, her eyes clearer. "Tell her, Charlotte, tell her now," Sabrina said inside Charlotte's mind. After a brief pause, as the information streamed into Charlotte's consciousness from Sabrina, Charlotte looked into Celeste's deep brown eyes and said, "You're pregnant. You're going to have a baby." Celeste froze in shock. "What, Charlotte? What are you talking about?" "Aunt Sabrina just told me. She can sense it. She can see the tiny baby growing already. This is a baby. There is a baby inside of you, only a few days old, but you are pregnant. A child is to come," Charlotte said. That can't be," Charlotte said, realizing that she had made love to two men in the last few days. Jacob first, and later her true love, Philip. Charlotte could understand from Celeste's blank stare that this is perhaps a surprise pregnancy and unplanned. Then she jumped back into her governess's arms and held her tight one more time, hoping her hug would make her feel better. But Celeste's outside quiet demeanor was actually screaming inside like a woman on fire. If Sabrina was right, then she was indeed with child. Whose child was it, Philip or Jacob's? Then, from the shadows of the hallway, Jacob appeared. He grabbed Celeste's arm and yanked her back into the turret. Charlotte screamed. As the force of Jacob's pull made her fall backwards, Celeste got up and tried to place herself in between Jacob and the turret door. Jacob closed it and locked it, then removed the key from the lock. "Now you know," Jacob said cryptically to Celeste, who couldn't hide her shaking hands. As night came again at the hospital outside Bangor, Maine, the mainland felt quiet and strange. Stranger than it usually felt. In the holding room, Christian Evans lay on the iron slab table, completely naked and asleep. As Dr. Kim examined his body, Christian was in good shape. He had perfect muscle tone. His body was young and healthy. He had small cuts around his fingers from various yard work around his home. His eyebrows were full and thick. His legs were like carved marble, muscular and strong. His feet like large and sturdy to hold up his hefty body shape. "This will do. He will be perfect. It's almost as if we were meant to be," Dr. Kim said in his science project. As Christian slept, Kim placed a small sheet over his body to the waist, leaving his strong chest and shoulders exposed. Kim then went over to a large oak chest of 40 tiny drawers that took up most of the one of the four walls in the room. In each of the drawers, medications, medicines, elixirs, and potions. He opened the drawer marked L and pulled out a small glass vial. He struck a needle in the vial that had the label that was written in Korean. Dr. Kim then walked over to Christian, still asleep, and looked down in his new subject as a nurse came in to observe and take notes. Per Kim's request. "Are you ready, doctor?" the nurse asked. "I am, thank you, Nurse Hoffman. For the record, I have rendered the patient asleep for the following purpose. The transformation, which will take a few weeks to finalize, could be painful when the medicine runs through his veins for a few hours. The patient will wake up and he will most likely have feelings of nausea, perhaps, well, vomit. Although this is not something I anticipate as the test and sessions continue, I will increase the dosage each time the patient dosage, sorry, easy enough for me to say. The patient will experience irritable anger and emotional change as the experiments go, Dr. Kim said for the notes. This charts each session will have you doubling the dose of the medications each time. Sorry. Is this correct? Nurse Hoffman wondered. Correct, Kim replied. The nurse lifted a brow, and that seemed excessive. Then Dr. Kim lowered his hand and carefully injected Christian with the medicine from the box in the drawer marked Patient X. Very good. Now let's get him dressed and into the room on level C, shall we? Dr. Kim ordered. The nurse nodded her head and called into orderlies to help the slumped over Christian. As Christian's sleeping body was was taken back to a room in Wincliffe's level C, a solitary confinement level. Dr. Andrew Kim opened up his briefcase and pulled out a copy of his paperwork Jacob had shown him. The paperwork clearly copies of originals that Kim's late husband fabricated using Lord publishing presses that showed the illegal marriage of the two loving men. Dr. Kim's face froze in anger. Jacob was holding his secret about him, and just as he was holding one over Celeste's family's past. The games of manipulation Jacob loved to play with so many people was how he got his way. Dr. Andrew Kim was no different. No one knew this secret husband of Dr. Kim's that gave Jacob so much leverage and power that he forced Kim to keep Evie locked away against any evidence of mental illness. It was a cruel trick, considering the man Kim was married to had died years ago, and so the certificate of marriage, when it was not legal anywhere in the country, was written for ceremony and sentimental value, and just so happened to be printed by the Lord Press Company, the same company Kim's husband worked for as a high executive for decades. Public knowledge of Kim's personal life, decades after his husband's death, could still be used to destroy Andrew Kim and his work at Wincliffe if Jacob exposed him. But now Andrew Kim had a plan of counterattack on Jacob's cruel blackmail that, like with Celeste, the Vinny was now coming to a head. Andrew Kim had his own weapon in the form of the human body, healthy, muscular, and a young Christian Evans. When the treatments were done, Dr. Andrew Kim would use the cellular modified powerful body and brainwashed mind of Christian Evans to kill Jacob Lord in the most horrible way possible, as the value marked Patient X was filled with the secret and experimental medical modified cells of an ex-patient at Wincliffe that had been sent there because of a penchant for murder and cannibalism that Dr. Kim was injecting into the former constable of Welshport, in hopes of creating something out of mythology, a real-life monster that he could brainwash to kill Jacob Lord once for all, freeing him from the secret Jacob was holding over his head. Kim then opened a drawer in the side desk and pulled out a torn in half photograph of his late husband, the man he married in secret a decade ago, but who died shortly after influenza, like many in that area at that time. The man was handsome, with dark hair and deep brown eyes, with the skin tanned from Welshport summer sun. He was at the time a photograph of fisherman Welshport, but had worked for the Lord Publishing in his later years. Kim gazed at the half photo and growled at his late husband's smile. Or sorry, glowed at his late husband's smile. This lit up the room. He had died so young. I won't let him turn us into fools, Kim said to the photo. I'll kill him first. So that's the read along. Keep in mind when um, when he says Georgina in his story now, Mary is in Georgina's body. I want to keep people in mind for that. So that'll be a good discussion for John for the interview. I don't want to say like any give any more of my predictions because I want to like save that for the interview. But really good character setting. Um, yeah, a murderer. There's a there. He's injecting him with a murderer. That's crazy. The, Now, I don't think the people in Halloween 6, the Cold Thorn, injected Michael with a serum, but that didn't turn out too well for those people. Um, you can't control pure evil, um, as Michael taught them by murdering those motherfuckers. Just saying, but yeah, yeah. Um, really good scene setting, really good character setting too. Straight 10 across the board. Really good. I like the fact that nobody so far nobody's questioning this Georgina thing anymore. So, and I like the fact that you have Alice out there who is going to continue to be part of the story. So we're getting and everybody wants Jacob. You got Sebastian wants Jacob dead. Sabrina wants Jacob dead. Dr. Kim wants Jacob dead. There are a lot of people who want Jacob dead. And this feels like John Tucker must die. No, I'm kidding. But I do. There are people who want Sebastian dead. So we'll see who kills him first. Holy shit. And Celeste is pregnant. Celeste is pregnant. All right, really good. Link to Benight and Beguile will be in the description box. I have one more video to do for you guys.